Hi everyone, great to be here talking to a sold out conference, so well done to Simone and team for pulling that off. Andy and Dave, we're going to talk to you about EY Nexus and how we can help power a frictionless business to deliver innovation. Dave and I have been both working in insurance tech for so long it wasn't called InsurtechLIVE then, 30 odd years. We actually first started working together over 20 years ago in the UK for a big insurer called Royal Sun Alliance who needed to replace and modernize their underwriting policy and claims platform, so that was a good experience. Interesting fact, Dave actually started out his career as an actuary. He actually wanted to be an accountant, but apparently didn't have the personality for that. So I hear, Dave. So anyway, enough of the bad jokes. Let's jump in. So Dave's going to mainly take the stage and talk to you about what EY Nexus is. We'll both then sort of finish off with a couple of case studies to bring it to life and show you that it's real. Before we jump into that, I'm just going to start with just some examples about what drives Nexus and the reason why we've built some of the things that we've built. And we've got quite a few slides with quite a lot of detail. Don't worry about that. You'll get copies of them if you want them, and you can come and talk to us at the booth or connect with us afterwards. We've done a little bit of work in EY thinking about what some of the emerging and new insurance customer personas are. There's 9 of them up here on the screen, from consumer into small business. I'll just pick a couple of examples. And the point here is that there are, and we've got a whole panel on customer needs and customer experience in a second, but there are what we think are a bunch of emerging customer needs that are driving new capabilities which are particularly difficult for traditional insurers with traditional capabilities to deliver on. So if I pick a couple of examples, this one here, which has been a bit of a theme throughout today and will be in the panel, we call them point of sale purchases. So there are consumers out there that want to protect what they buy at the instant they buy it. They don't want to go through an asset purchase process. I think Michael from Canopy was talking about this very eloquently earlier. What they want to do is cover the asset they're buying at the time they buy it. And again, I was going to give some examples of some capabilities you need there. Michael did that much better than I did, but you can see all the things that they listed. If those of you here listening to the Canopy pitch, there's a whole series of capabilities you need to do that, which are not inherently easy capabilities to deploy in traditional insurers. Another good example, one that's quite close to my heart, I'm the consumer data right lead for EY in this part of the world, is another hat that I wear, and a topic that was mentioned in the panel just a second ago. There are a group of customers out there that we call data capitalists. What they say is that I'll give you my data, but I expect you to keep it secure, but I want some reward back for giving you my data. So this is building on the principles around open insurance, open finance, and consumer data right. And again, this requires a whole bunch of capabilities that are not ones that are readily available or easy accessible in traditional insurance. So you need to be able to ingest lots of data about customers from disparate sources. You need to analyze that data sometimes in real time and think about what products and offerings and pricing you're going to give to those customers. So again, slightly new sets of capabilities for insurers, and there's a whole suite of others. So that's just a bit of a preamble of some of the things we're seeing in the market that are driving the need for new capabilities, which has in turn driven why we've built some of the stuff in Nexus that we have. I'll just hand over to Dave to talk through a little bit about what those problems are and why we think there are now ways to manage those better than there have been in the past.
Thanks, Andy. You've probably just seen me drinking a lot of water. I've got just about a frog in my throat, so it was looking like it was going to be a bit, sort of a bad ventriloquist act, but I think it's just about to go. What I would say to start off with, the problems and the challenges that insurance companies have faced haven't changed that much in the last 20 years, the time that Andy and I have been working together. Typically, insurers have grown by acquisition. With that acquisition comes multiple legacy policy admin systems that they never seem to get off, particularly the life insurers. Those legacy admin systems give an issue of a lack of speed to market, and they come with them a high maintenance cost. The challenges haven't changed. Perhaps they're even more acute because there's been more acquisition quite recently with the demergers from the banks. Some of the challenges that Andy talked about, the consumer data, for example. But the way that we can solve those problems now has changed. We can still do a rip and replace of a core policy admin system, and that was kind of the only way in the early 2000s because integration costs were too high. But now with the rise of the API, there's much more opportunity for a plug-and-play architecture and a gradual uplifting of capability in the areas that are most applicable to what your strategy is. In addition, a lot more of those things can be delivered as a managed service. The way I see the challenges manifesting down onto the actors in the field, customers don't really understand insurance products. They're not that exciting, sorry. But also, they don't really have a good way of getting to understand them. So they would like, in most cases, we have good digital access to find information, but it's actually not that easy in the insurance space. Brokers want to give that information, but they're not getting a consolidated or a good view from the insurers. Product owners really want to give products out to the market that the customers want to buy and that they actually need, but they can't deliver them at speed, so there's just too long a lag time to get out there. The technologists really want to be solving strategic business problems. Instead, they're just keeping the lights on. And the insurtechs would love to be the guys that come along to help, but there's sometimes a question of how do they fit, how do they get their wares known by the insurance companies, and how do they fit in that whole ecosystem, and how do they fit with their niche solution, solving one problem, but where does it fit within the rest of the ecosystem? So we've distilled that down into, we think there are 4 things that we're trying to do. One is launch things quickly. One is improve the customer experience, improve the operating efficiency of the company, and then we would say progressively modernize, because the typical rip and replace modernization is a once every 30 years kind of activity, and then you just on to the next monolith, which is where we think Nexus comes in. We've got at its heart, Nexus is an ecosystem of partners, both big and small, so insurtechs and the traditional players. We've got a pre-built library of components that helps us put those together, and that helps us speed the delivery of launching new products, new brands, even new companies, as Andy will talk about a bit later. We've also built some data ingestion and analytical tools, which enable us to hyper-customize the personal experience to those customers in real time. We've got capabilities for increasing the operational efficiency of businesses, which we can do at scale and at speed. And finally, one I'll talk a little bit more about later, we've applied low-code, no-code digital front ends across aging legacy, and then gradually replace the legacy with new components, but not all in one big bang. So I mentioned that at its heart, Nexus is an ecosystem, and that's, you'll see top that way. There are cross-sector applications in there, and Peggy and so forth, you're probably familiar with, business process management, and they don't apply to insurance companies, although we have deployed them in a number of insurance companies, and they sit within our Nexus ecosystem. And then on the right, the more typical insurance things that most people will be familiar with, Guidewire and Duck Creek and Fineos. But they're also, that's the space that we're also looking for the insurtechs to play in. So we'll see some of the, I've been working with OnCourt recently, and I'll talk a little bit more about them, and also with a company called Coherent that take Excel spreadsheets, treat it as source code, and turn it into executable API calls. So taking the proliferation of Excel that's all around in most insurance companies, let's face it, taking away the risk problem of that, because it's treating it like managed software and turning it into executable code. Whilst they have started in the insurance space, they are, Excel is proliferates everywhere. And then in the specific insurance space, again, the likes Guidewire, Duck Creek, Fineos, and then in the pricing space, I've worked a lot with Ernix, which are a couple of our insurers, and we're looking for more. So if I go to the next thing, I was speaking to a gentleman at the back. We are looking, so a lot of the integration we've done with data providers has been globally, not locally. So we're looking for local data providers that we would not be the consumer of that service, but show how that data would fit in the general ecosystem. So what I want to talk about with this picture, and then I'll hand back to Andy. In the center of it all, this is kind of, what is it? In the center of it all, we have a thing called Nexus Connect. It's an integration layer which combines business processes, rules engines, and APIs. Moving down to the right, we've got some pre-built connectors with our partners. Over on the bottom left, we have the data ingestion tools that I talked about, which will supplement the ingestion tools that companies will already have. Moving up, we've got some accelerators, which are what help us with that speed to deployment. And then finally, at the top, in some cases, we've built actual industry solutions, not really us writing code, but us rather bringing together different components from that ecosystem of partners. So you'll see one of them, and again, Andy will talk about this a bit later, was an insurance in the box solution, which was a full end-to-end insurance company, and they were able to deploy very quickly. I've got to hand back to Andy now. You can talk about how you become part of the ecosystem.
Thanks, Dave. So just talk about this because it's relevant, I think, for both insurers and insurtechs. We've got a method that we use for assessing insurtechs on a number of different dimensions. We've got 130 insurtechs and fintechs. We've got 130 of them that we've evaluated in the part of the ecosystem that Dave just talked about. We've got to that having evaluated about 1,200 globally over the last few years. So, you know, I won't drain the method, and it's probably not a surprise to some people in the room, but, you know, what's the relevance of the solution? It's a bit like the judging panel we were on a minute ago, actually, but a bit more detailed. What's the relevance of the solution to insurance? What lines of business? Is it new or traditional products? What's the level of digital enablement? So whereabouts in the value chain does it apply? What's the progressiveness of the tech, and so on? What's the market fit? So where does it sit? What's the customer investor sentiment? What's the competition? How dense is the area in terms of other players where they're operating? And then a bit around strategy and operations. So what does the management team look like? What's the investor profile, go-to-market strategy, those sorts of things. And the reason I kind of talk about this is I think it's quite useful. I think unless you're one of the bigger insurers, having a capability internally that can do this kind of thing on a continual basis, so understanding who's out there, what do they do, how might that benefit your business, and how do you integrate them is quite a burden. And some of the big insurers here and globally have teams that do that, but not everyone does. So there's something that can be leveraged here. I think if you're in InsurTech, and I think, you know, we heard that from Catherine earlier, understanding what others are looking for when they might be looking at your business is quite interesting. So this is our view of what we think is important. But so I think that, you know, if you're in InsurTech, we'd be happy to share this with you. And if any InsurTechs out there are interested in understanding about becoming part of the Nexus ecosystem, we're very, very happy to talk to you. 2 minutes left. I think we've got time for a couple of case studies. Dave will talk about the first one, then I'll wrap up with the second.
Thanks, Andy. So this was a large APAC insurer, life and health insurer. They had that classic problem that I talked about of a legacy system that they wanted to modernize, but they wanted to give a digital experience to their customers as a first thing rather than some long 3-year program where they modernize from the bottom up. What we did with them was we worked with one of our partners, Uncork, which is a low-code, no-code platform, and we put a digital front end over first the claim service, and then a bit beyond that. We used Nexus Connect that I mentioned before to plumb that into their legacy claim system. The next stage was then to plug in a modern policy system into Nexus Connect with those digital journeys above, which was then enabling them to write new products. The old products were still written on the old system, but they couldn't write the new ones on that old system, so they needed that new policy admin system for that. The final stage is actually not yet complete, but we've worked with Fineos to produce a demo within the Nexus environment that shows that exact same stack, but now with Fineos running on that digital journey. So we proposed to them that Fineos is a good partner for them to begin their transition from the legacy claims onto a more modern claims platform without the customer realizing that new claims are going on new and old claims are running off on old.
Thanks, Dave. Second one, Nationwide, people probably know, massive insurer in the US. What they wanted to do was launch a product that appealed to the millennial and Gen Z population. I think that's about 50% of the consumer base in the US now. They did some research on that customer base, very clear direction that they wanted to engage digitally and primarily on a mobile device. The two bugbears they had with insurance was that quotes took too long and the product wasn't transparent, so those were two key product features that were sought. Interestingly, Nationwide wanted to get this product to market within a year. They were going through a core platform modernization program, and it was going to be multiple years for them to be able to launch this if they'd done that on that current tech stack. So what they actually did, was not just launch a new product, but launch a new business. So Spire is the name of the business. This was showcased at ITC Vegas actually a couple of years back. And what they managed to do with our support was launch an end-to-end auto insurance product and platform. You could get a quote in under a minute. You scan your driver's license, answer 4 questions. There was some driver performance assessment that went into a calculation of premiums. We're completely technology agnostic, by the way, so we don't particularly push one technology over another. In this case, it was Socotra that was used to do the product rating and forms config. We wrapped some other bits of technology around there, some rating capability from Swiss Re. And given how quickly this needed to get out, we actually ran 5 different EY teams in different countries and got to sort of 16 hours of productivity a day, which allowed us to deliver this in about 7 months from start to finish. So it's quite remarkable time to market. And we use many of the same components that Dave talked about. So Socotra can do some things. There's a bunch of things it doesn't need if you look at the end-to-end capabilities for an insurer. So that's what came with the EY insurance in a box. So we were able to wrap some pre-existing bits of package software around that were already plumbed together and connected through Nexus Connect. So that's, we're about a minute over, sorry about that. Just as a recap then, if you are an insurer and you're interested in launching new products more quickly, improving customer experience, operating at a lower cost base, and modernizing your tech, or if you're an InsurTech that's interested in becoming part of the Nexus ecosystem, then come and have a chat with us. Thanks.